So we're going to go ahead and get started with the message. And today's message, I struggled with this one, man. I was talking to Frank, and I said, I should have thought of this at the beginning and made this a the whole month, the series for the whole month, especially because next week is Father's Day, like the greatest national holiday of all time, next week, and I just spaced it. But I had this idea, and so I want to talk about it today. And so the title of the message today is Just Another Normal Day in the Life of a Child of God. Just another normal day in the life of a child of God. So let's think about this. What does a normal day in the life of a child of God look like? Well, obviously, you wake up in the morning and you read your Bible for a little bit while you drink your coffee, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And then you get ready for work, you head to work, you try to be nice to people, and you try to go the whole day without saying any cuss words, right? And then you come home from work, and, you say hi to the wife and, pat the dog on the head or whatever. And then when dinner time comes, you pray for your meal, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. And then you go to bed, and you start it all over the next day. Basically, right? Have you ever thought of what a day in the life of a child of God is supposed to look like? This is like the typical day in the life of a child of God. Just another normal day. This is what people think about us. And this is the people that don't dislike us. Because they think way horrible things about us. But this is what people think of us as children of God. That this is kind of like our typical day. Non-believers have a pretty weird idea of what being a Christian is supposed to be like. There was a guy this week, I was like mowing and pulling weeds and stuff like that this weekend. So it was hot all week. So it was hot that day. And so I was like sweaty and stinky, and I was wearing a white t-shirt covered in dirt. And I think I had like a buff around my neck because I try to cover my nose because I'm so allergic to the stuff. So my eyes were like I looked like I was on cocaine probably, but I wasn't, and this guy comes in, and Erica, our administrative assistant, she was in the bathroom, so she didn't hear him. He came in, and he walked into the offices, and I was taking a break in my office with the door shut, so I just heard him say, hello. And so I knew somebody was there, so I went out, and I said, hey, how's it going? What can I help you with? And he looked at me, he kind of looked me up and down, and he said, any chance I could talk to a minister? And I was like, oh, that's me, And he looked at me again, and he kind of like looked around, and he looked past me to the other offices, and he's like, is there any chance I could talk to the head minister? So I punched him in the face. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm like, well, right now that's me, our lead pastor, he's on sabbatical, and he just seemed like shocked that I was a minister. He needed help with some stuff, and I spent some time with him, but he just seemed shocked that I was a minister. I don't know what he thought I was supposed to look like. Maybe he thought I was going to be like wearing a robe and praying in Latin somewhere in the church, But he had some kind of picture in his mind of what a minister was supposed to look like, and I didn't fit it. And it was just kind of funny. Same thing happens just, as Christians. People do the same thing. They've painted this picture of what a Christian looks like and what the day in the life of a Christian or a child of God is supposed to be like. And the bad thing is, a lot of times they're not that far off from what I just described. Frank and I were talking about this yesterday, and we decided sometimes they're even giving us a little bit too much credit. Because both of us are like, dude, there's a few days this week I didn't even open my Bible. I was busy. You know what I mean? So to them, this is a typical day in the life of a child of God, just like I just described. And the bad thing is, they're not that far off. And again, sometimes they're even giving us a little bit too much credit. How do our lives differ from what I just described, or do they differ? And some of us are going, like me and Frank did, yeah, they're a little bit different because I didn't read my Bible. Or I I didn't go the whole day without saying a bad word, or whatever it is, you know. How does your life differ than what I just described? See, they don't differ that much sometimes because we have painted a picture of what the day in the life of a Christian looks like too, and we painted it basically the same way. Do you get what I'm saying? We've painted for ourselves a picture of what a Christian is supposed to look like. One time I was serving this church. We were doing a Thanksgiving outreach. Some of you will remember it, and when it was back at the rec center. We were doing this Thanksgiving outreach, and there was this guy there who I knew from church. Like, he knew me. We talked at church and all this kind of stuff. And he was there, but he was just there to eat because there was free food, right? So he was there to eat. And I was there serving, and I had worked all day getting ready for this. I had games planned. I had a skit planned with some teenagers and all this stuff. I was serving food, and I noticed that night as he's sitting at his table, he was like glaring at me like the whole night. Like, he just looked like he was mad at me for some reason, and I didn't know why. I'm like, what the heck is up with this guy tonight? It's kind of weird. And then I happened to be the guy that got to give him his food. So I went over to his table, set his food down for him, said, here you go. And he just looked at me. He didn't say thank you or anything. He just was kind of looking at me. He got up out of his seat and just walked away, walked straight over to the pastor and started talking to the pastor. And he's pointing at me, and the pastor's looking at me going, and I see them talking for a while, and the guy just looked ticked off. And so I went over to Pastor Scott, and I said, what is his deal, man? He looks like he wants to kill me today. And he said, you want to know what he said? I said, yeah. He said, he came over, he demanded to know why we were letting someone with tattoos serve people in our church. He was disgusted that I was serving people and talking on the microphone and things like that, and he was not happy about it. See, even some Christians have this painting that they've made of what a Christian is supposed to look like, and to this guy, I didn't fit it. We've also painted a picture of what a normal day in the life of a child of God should look like. Another time, a guy from the church and I were out. I don't know why I was with this guy, because he's not the kind of guy that I wanted to hang out with, let's just say that. But he came to the church here. I knew him. I didn't like hanging out with him, but we happened to be together for something. I can't remember why, if we were working at the church or something like that. It wasn't you, Gary, don't worry. And we some whisper something to Heather. and then we went to lunch, and like I said, I don't remember why, but I remember they brought me my lunch, and I started eating it, and this guy, like, blew a cork, man. He was so mad. He's like, I cannot believe you just started eating your food without thanking God for it first. And he was mad, and he was telling me about it, and he used the F word about 5 times while he was telling me. No kidding, man. This is how he was telling me how horrible I was because I didn't thank God for my food. And I'm like, I want to say, man, I've seen how you treat your family. I've seen how you talk to people. I've seen how you talk to people in the community and stuff like that. I thank God for everything I have every day. I might not have prayed before I ate my food, but you're a horrible person. So what about that? You know what I mean? But to him, it was just such a big deal because I didn't pray before I ate my food. I don't do that all the time, man. But I pray a whole bunch. It's sort of like we have this daily checklist of things, and that is what we call being a Christian. A checklist of things that we do throughout the day. That's a normal day. The picture the world has painted and the picture that many of us have painted sometimes don't differ that much. It's what we've accepted as normal. So I actually spent some time this week doing some research. It was pretty depressing. On what do Christians do throughout the day? You know, I'm like, I just started Googling stuff because Google is the most reliable source of information, anyway. But anyway, it's a good place to start. So I started Googling, like, what does the typical day in the life of a Christian look like? And so I spent way too much time doing this too, by the way. And so I found some pretty interesting stuff, though. I found this survey done in 2014 on how much TV people watch. I don't remember how I even got to this thing. And this was done by the Barna Institute, which is a legit place. Barna is legit. And so it said in 2014 that the average American watched over 3 hours of TV every day. But the thing I found interesting was that they added in there that the average churchgoer watches even more. I don't know why. It didn't say why or anything like that. I assumed that they're watching me on YouTube or something. I don't know. But it said that the average churchgoer watches even more. I just thought that was interesting. I found a survey done in the New York Times because I wanted to see if there was any more stuff on that. I didn't find anything else about why Christians were watching more TV, but in 2016, 2 years later, according to the New York Times, the average adult was now watching 5 hours and 4 minutes of TV a day. That's a lot of TV. And if Christians were watching more than other people 2 years ago, then it would probably be safe to assume that maybe they still were in 2016, right? I don't know why, but it could be the case. So, average day in the life of a Christian seems to have a lot to do with watching TV at some point. And it might not be you guys. This is just America, the United States. There was a survey of over 1,500 Christians, professing Christians, that said nearly all, 90% of them, 90% of the 1,500 said they read their Bible regularly, but it didn't say what regularly was. Everybody has a different idea of what regularly is, So you might ask somebody, hey, do you read your Bible regularly? And they go, I go to church every Sunday, so yeah. You know what I mean? Read it regularly, once a week, when they put it up there. Some people, it's every day. So they didn't have a description. It's just said 1,500 said, or 90% of the 1,500 said that they read their Bible regularly. But only 31%, which is 465 of those people, said that they set aside time each day to pray. Although 87% agreed that every Christian needs to spend time alone with God on a daily basis. So of those 1,500 people, churchgoers, of those 1,500 people, 1,350 said that it's important to spend time with God every day, but only 465 of them are doing it. Interesting. Over half of the actual praying Christians said, 60% of them said they prayed on the move. So those people that said that they pray while they're doing something. They pray while they're driving to work. They pray while they're walking. If you're using public transportation, you should be praying. If you're driving on I-70 in town, you should be praying. But anyway, that's their time to pray. That is their time to pray, on the move. Is this ringing a bell with anybody? Because it does with me a lot. There was a substantial difference in Bible engagement between older and younger Christians. Okay, this was interesting too. With 60% of those born before 1960, 60% of Christians born before 1960 managed to read their Bible daily, compared to just 31% of younger Christians, and younger Christians being 58 years old and younger. From 60% to 31%. It's interesting. And here's the thing. There's no way for us to calculate how many of those people were just lying. You know what I mean? You don't think people will lie on a survey, because they don't want to sound bad even though nobody knows that they did it? People will lie on surveys. Do you want some proof? Okay, here's the proof. Another survey done said that more than 40% of Americans claim to attend weekly church services, but in-depth research has indicated that less than 20% actually do. So 40% said they did. Less than 20% actually do. So people will lie on a survey. How about that? Said only 27% of millennials say they attend religious services on a weekly basis. How about this one? Between 2007 and 2014, there was a 3.7% decline in weekly church attendance based on a poll of respondents. Meanwhile, the United States population increased by over 16 million people during the same time frame. Church attendance dropped 3.7%, while the population of the United States increased by over 16 million people. Is that making you nervous? Church is on the decline, guys. Church attendance is on the decline. People praying is on the decline. People reading their Bible is on the decline, and it's drastic. And, here's the other thing. Nowhere in there, I looked for this. I tried to find this. What do Christians do, stuff like that. Nowhere in there, I didn't find one time anything that it said anything about fellowshipping with other believers outside of a scheduled church function. Nowhere. I tried to find it. I thought surely somebody's in here is saying that this is important. Nowhere. Because we think that this is fellowship. We think that we had 7 minutes of fellowship. You know what I mean? That's all I can handle of these people. No. 7 minutes of fellowship at church, or we fellowship down there. If Tim Willingham was here, he would fellowship with you for 30 minutes after church. But is that the fellowship that God is talking about? I don't think it is. I think that's a contribution to the fellowship that God is talking about. Nowhere in this stuff that I looked at that I find anywhere that they said, yep, and we make time to fellowship with other believers, even though it's a common theme throughout the Bible. Fellowship with other believers. Don't become partners with unbelievers. It's a common theme throughout the Bible. But nowhere did I find that we need to be fellowshipping with other believers. That's interesting. You know what else? Can you believe this, Alan? Nowhere in my research, anywhere, one single time, did I find anything about serving. Nowhere. Couldn't find it. Isn't that interesting? Normal day in the life of a Christian painted by the world, and the normal day in the life of a Christian painted by churchgoers, we can call them, is not that different. It's really not. At Journey Church, we have these things called core values, and you can see them on the walls downstairs. Our core values are believe, belong, benefit, and bring. Believe, belong, benefit, and bring. You should really memorize these things. So, if you're here, we hope that you are a believer, and if not, then we're just happy that God is working on you. So that's believe. Belong means that you are starting to become part of the fellowship. The fellowship. And that you're getting involved in things. Maybe you're getting involved in the men's ministry. Maybe you're getting involved in the women's ministry or the youth ministry if you're a teenager or whatever it is. That's belong. Then benefit. Benefit means that you're going to still contribute to fellowship, probably fellowship even more, but you're also serving somehow. It doesn't have to be even a ministry here, Not like you have to be a youth leader, but serving. The Schultzes, I love those guys. Just a while back, John called me. He's like, hey, there's a guy that needs help moving. You want to help? And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, how do you know him? He's like, oh, I don't know him. My wife knows him from work. He just needs help. So I was like, sure, yeah, I'll come help. So we helped this guy like move stuff out of his garage. And it was a Wednesday night. And then I came back here because they had the like Wednesday night stuff, and I was just hanging out here. And I was a little worn out because we did it quick. You know, it wasn't that much. And people were like, what were you doing? I said, we were helping a guy move. And they're like, who was it? And I was like, I don't know. It was just a guy that the Schultzes knew. And you would be shocked at how many people were like, then why did you do it? It was so sad to me. Well, why would you do it then? If you didn't know him, why would you do it? Because he needed help. You guys get that? Serving. Benefit. And then bring. We're supposed to be making disciples, bringing other people along and starting them through the same thing, right? It makes sense, doesn't it? We have them for a reason. And I think one of the reasons that we have these core values is because Pastor Chris, okay, don't get mad at me. Larry, don't fire me until I finish, okay? This is why I think we have these. I think Pastor Chris actually wants you guys to have just another normal day in the life of a child of God. Just another normal day. Actually, that's what I want for you guys too. I want you guys to just have another normal day in the life of a child of God. That's what I want for our teenagers. See, parents are like, here's the thing though. We just want it to be a different kind of normal. You guys get what I'm saying? This normal is not the way God designed it. We want a different kind of normal. Does that make sense? What if somebody asked somebody from Journey Church, you know, they see you on the street and they go, hey, what's going on? How was your day yesterday? What if their answer was more like this? Oh, you know, it was just another normal day. I started out by making some time just for me and God, and I studied His Word. I got really into it. I meditated on it. I prayed for a little while. I thank God for everything that He's done for me. You know, and then I went off to work, and on my way, I just decided that I was going to worship Him while I drove. So I started to worship God on my way to work, and by the time I got to work, man, I was so full of joy that the day just seemed to fly by. I even got a chance to witness to a coworker because I noticed that they were having a bad day. And then, you know, I went home and I relaxed a little bit, and then, you know, I remembered that this person wasn't feeling very good, so I just called them and saw how they were doing, and then the funny thing happened. As soon as I hung up the phone, someone else called me, and they just wanted to see how I was doing and if I needed prayer about anything, and then they invited my family over for dinner next week. And then, you know, I was sitting there, I noticed that the neighbor was struggling with something in his garage, so I went out, I gave him a hand, and, you know, we talked for a little bit. And then I came home, and I sat down to relax for some really good and really well-deserved rest at the end of the day. And then I went to bed full of peace. I went to bed with a clean conscience, and I went to bed a little bit more in love with my Savior. You know, nothing spectacular, just a normal day. What if that was normal? Shouldn't that be normal? We want you to have just another normal day in the life of a child of God. It doesn't mean as much as it used to, I don't think. A child of God. So we've talked a lot without getting into the Bible, so now we're going to get into the Bible. We're going to start reading in Romans 8. And I know I'm reading a lot. I don't normally do this, but this is all so good. Go home and read Romans 8, the whole thing. Okay? Huh, Dave? Dave was like, yes, do that. Romans 8. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. What does your day look like? I'll leave it at that. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. What does your normal day look like? The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. Sounds mighty good. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. You know that that's true. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. For those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. You, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but are in the realm of the Spirit. Now understand, this is written to a church. And he says this. This is pretty profound, okay? He says, you, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but are in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. Not because the Spirit of God lives in you. If indeed he does. Talking to a church. Makes you think. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, they do not belong to Christ. But if Christ is in you, then even though your body is subject to death because of sin, the Spirit gives life because of what? It's up there. Righteousness. Man, we talked about that last week, right? The number one need of man, righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies, because his Spirit, it's his Spirit who lives in you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not to the flesh to live according to it. To live according to what? The Spirit living in you. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. Now we're getting into it. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. Who are the children of God? Those who are led by the Spirit of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so you can put that checklist away. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. Sweet. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. That means daddy. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit. Listen to that. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. That's huge. If indeed we share in his suffering, in order that we may also share in his glory. This makes being a child of God sound pretty sweet. Right? It doesn't sound boring and mundane like the world would describe it, and honestly like some of us would describe it. It doesn't make it sound that way at all, does it? It makes it sound awesome. Has being a child of God lost its impact on you? Like you've heard it too many times and it just doesn't fill you with the same kind of joy? To say that you are a child of God, that should be like a life-changing statement. I am a child of God. Have you ever seen like royalty? Like, you know, we've seen a bunch of it lately. You know, and how they carry themselves and stuff like that, and the way they act. They just act different. Do you know why? Because they know that they're royalty. Right? Do you know that you're royalty? Come on. This is God. That's pretty profound. Normal day in the life of a child of God should carry with it some sort of confidence. Knowing, listen, dude, I'm a child of the King. I'm a child of the King. What do you got? Right? It should carry with it some sort of confidence. It should affect the way we carry ourselves around others. And it should affect the way we carry ourselves around God. I read a thing one time about, I think it was John F. Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln, and they both had like little boys living in the White House with them. They were really little. And from what I read, it said that they were allowed to go into the Oval Office anytime they wanted, no matter what. They could go into the Oval Office anytime they wanted. Anybody else, obviously, would have to have some sort of appointment and have it all scheduled out, probably background checks, all that kind of stuff. If it was their son, they could go in anytime they wanted. None of the security guards would mess with them, Secret Service. They knew that he gets to go in. Why? Because that guy that was the president to everybody else was daddy to them. You guys get what I'm saying? Daddy. Hebrews 10:19 says, "Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which is consecrated for us through the veil that is his flesh." Boldness to enter into his presence. Just like these two little guys with their dad. Boldness to enter into his presence. A normal day in the life of a child of God should involve entering into his presence. I know I'm running short on time. That never happens. It was Paul's fault for the worship thing. A normal day in the life of a child of God should involve entering into his presence. There's an authority there. I get to do it whenever I want to. It could be normal every day. It says the spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the spirit you received brought you your adoption to sonship. Slaves have no authority. Sons and daughters do because of who dad is. You guys understand that? There's authority. I'm going to skip some of this. That's why it should have been a 4-week thing. Ended on Father's Day. I want to hit this topic, though, because this is going to be big for some people, I think. It also involves intimacy. It's what so many of us are lacking when it comes to our relationship with God, and at least our everyday, normal day as a child of God. Where is the intimacy? What does it say? It says, "And by him we cry, Abba. Abba, Father." How many times has AJ, when he was a little boy, how many times did he call you Father? Not that often, right? What do he call you? Daddy. Why? Because there's something special there. There's a closeness there. There's an intimacy there. Do you guys get that? In Galatians 4:6 it says, "And because we are his children, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, prompting us to call out, Abba, Father." You see those videos of like dads coming home from overseas. You see when their kid sees them for the first time. What do they say? Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. They can't even control it hardly. You guys get that closeness? It could be an everyday normal thing. Doesn't that sound great? It even says the Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. It says he even is there to encourage you to say, look, you're a child of God. You're a child of God. You guys get the weight of that. A child of God. I'm skipping everything else in my sermon because we're running out of time, but I also just thought of something that I wanted to share. I read this story a long time ago, so I'm going to get some of it wrong, but I'll get most of it right. I read this story, and it was about this fire in this building. It was a long time ago. It was, I don't know, maybe the 40s or something. So there was this fire in this building, and it was a really bad fire, and they didn't have enough ladders and stuff like that, and they found out that in one of the rooms was a baby in a crib, and they had no way to get to them. They had no way to get to this baby, and so they had pretty much decided, like, we can't make it to the baby. You know, it's terrible. When all of a sudden, this guy comes running out through the crowd and starts climbing the drain pipe on the building. And the fire is so hot that it's leaving his skin on the drain pipe of the building, because the drain pipe is so hot that it's burning his hands and melting his hands as he's climbing to this baby. And when he gets up there, he climbs into the building, he ties the baby up in a sheet somehow, throws the baby over his shoulder, and climbs back down this hot metal drain pipe, burning his hands all the way down, and he saves this baby. Unfortunately, the baby's parents were in the apartment too, and they died. And so this guy decided, I'm going to adopt this baby. But he was poor, in the eyes of a lot of people anyway. He didn't make a lot of money, but he wanted to adopt this baby. So they had this like court hearing to see if he could adopt this baby. And they said, why do you think you deserve to adopt this baby? And he walked up in front of everybody and he did this. Hands bandaged up, melted and burned. Look what I did. You guys get that? Nothing compared to what God did to adopt you. Right? If a dad would love a kid that much, imagine. If he would do that, look what I've done, guys. Look what I did. You don't want to be my kid? You don't want to have that kind of relationship with me? Really? You guys understand the difference between a normal day in the life of a child of God and what a normal day in the life of a child of God could be? Let's be that kind of normal. I think you guys got the idea. I know I missed some stuff, but I think you guys got the idea. There's so much more. And we think it's out of our grasp, but it's not. We can walk into his presence anytime we want because that's Daddy, right? A little late, I'm going to have Paul come up. We're going to have prayer partners come up. If you need prayer for something, come on up and get prayed for. If you want to pray about anything that has to do with this, you can have altar time, whatever you want to do. But we're going to have prayer partners come up just so that they're available to pray with you guys. But guys, I want you to just be thinking about this. When you go home today, when you're laying in bed tonight, think about this. What is a normal day in the life of a child of God? What should that look like? And am I experiencing that? It's available. We settle for junk when intimacy with God is available. He loves you so much. Look what he did. Look how much he paid in order to adopt you. Come on. He has more for you. Normal, everyday child of God. He has more for you. And it's so good. If you want to come up and pray about anything, prayer partners are up here and available. I'm gonna pray with you guys too. And if you need to go, you can go. Paul and Tammy are up here ready to lead us. If you want to stay in worship, hey, worship can't go long, right? You can stay in worship. We can start all over if they want. Why don't you all stand? Let's pray. Father God, today we just thank you for your presence. God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to get together and to worship you. God, I thank you for the opportunities that you give us every day that sometimes we don't even take advantage of. God, I thank you that we have the authority and the right to enter into your presence anytime that we want to. God, we're sorry that sometimes we don't take advantage of that. God, I pray for people in this building as maybe even new believers. God, just learning more about you, that they'll see that there's so much more available to a child of God, that we're not going to accept the world's picture of what being a child of God is, or even our own, Lord. We want yours. God, we want what you want for us. So God, I pray that we take this opportunity to draw closer to you every day. God, that we will make the time to be alone with you. We'll make the time to pray and all of this stuff. And we won't think of it as missing out or anything on anything or having to do extra stuff. That we'll just see it as growing closer to you, and we'll be happy that we're doing it, full of joy, full of peace, clear conscience. God, I pray as we draw closer to you, that you'll work in our lives and change us. God, that there will even be a family resemblance in the way that we act, in the way that we interact with people. God, that they'll see a difference. They'll want to be a part of this family. God, and you'll give us the words to tell people about how to do that. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Again, you guys are welcome to leave if you want to. We love you guys. We'll see you next week for Father's Day. Bring your dad. Get him a nice expensive present. And the altar's open, and our prayer partners are still here to pray with you if you want to pray.
It's over.